The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Starfleet built Deep Space Nine on those principles: uranium alloys, plasma conduits, graviton emitters maintaining artificial gravity in the cold void. But what happens when the void itself awakens? What happens when two forces older than reason itself arrive at the threshold between realities, and the only thing standing between order and primordial chaos is a Cardassian mining station and the crew that inherited it? The Dominion attack began like countless others, Jem'Hadar fighters screaming through the wormhole in tight formations, their polaron beams carving brilliant scars across DS9's shields. Captain Benjamin Sisko stood on the Defiance bridge, his voice calm and measured as he coordinated the defense. Hard to port. Target their lead ship's weapons array. Aye, Captain, Lieutenant Commander Worf acknowledged, his fingers dancing across tactical controls. The Defiance pulse phasers hammered into Jem'Hadar hull plating, and one fighter spiraled away, venting plasma. But then the wormhole, that stable, predictable phenomenon the Bajorans called the Celestial Temple, convulsed. The brilliant blue-white event horizon that had opened and closed with mathematical precision for years suddenly expanded, its edges fracturing like shattered glass. Subspace rippled outward in visible waves. Report. Sisko barked. Lieutenant Jadzia Dax's hands flew across her science console, her joined trill mind processing centuries of experience against data that made no sense. Benjamin, I'm reading massive spatial distortions. The wormhole's neutrino signature just spiked by 3,000%. It's opening to more than one terminus simultaneously. On the main view screen, the wormhole tore wider. Not the controlled aperture of the Prophet's domain, but something violent and wrong. Two distinct rifts appeared within the larger phenomenon, one bleeding absolute darkness that consumed even starlight, the other crackling with energy that registered on no known spectrum. From the shadow rift, she emerged. Nyx manifested as a presence first, a suffocating weight that pressed against every mind on every ship. Then form followed, a figure draped in darkness that moved like liquid night, tall and terrible, with eyes that held the emptiness between galaxies. The station's external lights flickered and died in her presence, emergency systems struggling to compensate. Where she existed, shadows deepened impossibly, defying the physics of light propagation. Major Kira Nerys felt her breath catch as she watched from ops. Every Bajoran instinct screamed that this was no prophet, no Paraith, but something far older. Something that existed before the Celestial Temple, before the prophets themselves learned to exist outside linear time. From the second rift came power of a different nature. Hecate stepped through reality itself as if parting a curtain. Where Nyx was absence, Hecate was overwhelming presence, magical energy bleeding from her form in patterns that made Starfleet sensors scream warnings about subspace integrity failures. She appeared humanoid but radiated something that touched the ancient, mystical parts of existence that Federation science claimed didn't exist. Runes of power orbited her form, each one a door to somewhere else, each one a threat to causality itself. The two goddesses regarded each other across the void between DS9 and the wormhole. For one heartbeat, the Dominion attack ceased to matter. The Jem'Hadar hesitated, their genetically programmed loyalty to the Founders momentarily overridden by primal recognition. These were apex predators, and even bred warriors could feel it. Then Nyx spoke, and her voice was the whisper of dying stars. The night is eternal. This nexus of realities will be mine. Hecate's response came in a language that predated spoken word, but every universal translator on every ship somehow rendered it perfectly. Magic flows where worlds meet. I am the crossroads. I am the threshold. You are merely shadow. I am the first darkness, Nyx countered, and shadows erupted from her form like solar flares of anti-light. They slammed into Hecate with force that should have been metaphysical, but the impact registered on every sensor. Spatial distortion, graviton surge, subspace pressure wave. Hecate raised one hand and reality bent. A shield of pure magical force, except there was no magic in this universe, so it manifested as impossible quantum manipulation, particles behaving in ways that violated Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The shadow wave broke against it, and where darkness met witchcraft, space itself cracked. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Sisko ordered. The Defiant banked hard as a subspace fissure opened where they'd been seconds before. Through ops viewports, Chief Miles O'Brien watched in horror as spatial tears spread like fractures in ice. One Jem'Hadar fighter, too slow to react, touched the edge of a fissure and simply ceased, not destroyed, not vaporized, but edited from existence. Getting strange readings from the wormhole, Dax reported, her voice tight with concern. The prophets are agitated. I'm receiving what might be a message, but it's fragmentary. They're saying something about the linear ones must not let the ancients breach the temple. Nyx and Hecate circled each other, and with each movement, Deep Space Nine groaned. The station's structural integrity field strained against forces they weren't designed to counter. In the promenade, civilians screamed as shadows detached from walls and moved with predatory intelligence. On the habitat ring, Quark dove behind his bar as magical energy arced through the air, transmuting a table into something crystalline and geometrically impossible. Sisko watched the view screen, watched two beings of incomprehensible power prepare for war with each other, and his station, his crew, his entire reality caught in the middle. The Dominion attack had become irrelevant. Even the Jem'Hadar were withdrawing, their tactical doctrine having no protocols for gods. Dax, I need to understand what we're dealing with, Sisko said. Can you analyze their energy signatures? I'm trying, but Benjamin. Dax's voice carried 8 lifetimes of scientific experience and every one of them was baffled. These aren't just powerful beings. They're conceptual. Nyx's darkness isn't the absence of light, it's the fundamental state that existed before light was possible. And Hecate's power is reading as localized reality rewrites. She's making magic real by forcing this universe to accept rules that shouldn't apply here. On the view screen, Hecate gestured, and runes the size of starships blazed into existence around DS9. Nyx responded by plunging half the station into absolute darkness, not darkness as absence of light, but darkness as a physical presence, smothering and aware. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Sisko straightened in his command chair. They'd faced the Borg, the Dominion, even Q's capricious omnipotence. But this was different. This wasn't a test or a war. This was two primordial forces using his station as their battleground, and if he didn't find a way to stop them, Deep Space Nine, and possibly the entire Alpha Quadrant, would be caught between the Goddess of Night and the Witch Queen of Magic. All hands, he said into the comm, his voice carrying the authority of Starfleet and the weight of the emissary. Battle stations. We're going to need every option available. This isn't a fight we can win with weapons, but we will find a way to survive it. On the view screen, Nyx and Hecate clashed again, and space itself screamed. The sensor alarms in ops created a cacophony that Chief O'Brien had never heard in combination: structural integrity warnings, subspace instability alerts, graviton flux readings that shouldn't exist, and something his console labeled simply as unknown phenomenon in red text that pulsed like a heartbeat. I'm rerouting power from secondary systems to structural integrity, O'Brien reported, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd kept this station running through Cardassian sabotage, Dominion attacks, and more spatial anomalies than he cared to remember. But this was different. His readouts showed the station's very molecular bonds straining. But Chief, if these two keep going at it, there won't be a station left to protect. Major Kira stood at her post, watching the view screen with the tactical mind of a resistance fighter who'd learned to assess impossible odds. We need to establish communication. Find out what they want. What they want is each other dead and control of the wormhole, Dax said, her hands never stopping their dance across the science console. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from both entities. Nyx is drawing power from, she paused, recalibrating sensors. From the absence of stellar radiation in surrounding space. She's literally feeding on the darkness between stars. And Hecate is tapping into the wormhole's exotic particles, using them as a magical battery. Sisko's jaw tightened. The wormhole was sacred to the Bajorans, home to the prophets, and the most strategically vital location in the quadrant. If Hecate was using it as a power source, she was threatening everything the Federation and Bajorans had fought to protect. Hail them. Both of them. Standard first contact protocols. Kira worked her console, but shook her head. They're not responding. I'm not even sure they register our hails as communication. To them, we might be insects, Worf supplied grimly from tactical. We are beneath their notice. On the view screen, Nyx extended her arms, and the darkness around her form coalesced into something almost solid. Shadow constructs materialized, vast, serpentine shapes that moved through space with predatory grace. They weren't ships, weren't physical in any conventional sense, but when one passed near a Jem'Hadar fighter that had lingered too long, the ship's hull simply aged centuries in seconds, duranium corroding to dust. Hecate's response was immediate and devastating. She spoke words in that ancient tongue, and geometric patterns of light exploded outward, not magical circles, but complex mathematical constructs that existed in dimensions Starfleet sensors could barely perceive. Where they intersected Nyx's shadow serpents, reality chose which law to obey, darkness or sorcery. The resulting detonation sent shockwaves that rocked the Defiant even at full impulse distance. We're being hailed, Kira announced suddenly. But not by them. It's the Rotaran. General Martok wants to know if we're mounting a defense. Sisko activated the channel. Martok's scarred face filled a secondary screen, his expression carrying the eager anticipation of a Klingon who'd found a worthy battle. Captain Sisko. These beings, they are gods, yes. Finally, a battle worthy of song. General, with respect, this isn't a battle we can win with disruptors, Sisko replied. We need to understand them first, Martok finished, surprising Sisko with his restraint. Yes, I know. But if understanding fails, the Empire stands ready. There is honor in dying against gods. The transmission cut as another spatial shockwave hit. Through the view screen, Sisko watched Hecate gesture toward DS9 itself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in the habitat ring, impossible flowers began blooming through deck plating, not breaking through, but simply existing where metal had been, as if the station's structure was optional. She's rewriting localized reality, Dax breathed. Benjamin, she's not just powerful, she's making the universe accept that magic is a fundamental force here, like gravity or electromagnetism. If she succeeds in fully establishing that paradigm, then Federation technology stops working, O'Brien finished. Because our tech is built on physics that says magic doesn't exist. Dr. Julian Bashir's voice came through the comm, tight with controlled panic. Ops, this is infirmary. I'm treating patients with injuries that shouldn't be possible. One engineer has shadows embedded in his cellular structure. Another has what I can only describe as curses manifesting as actual medical conditions. I need to know what we're dealing with. Before Sisko could respond, Odo's voice cut in from the promenade. Captain, we have a situation. The civilians are panicking, and I can't blame them. Shadows are moving independently of light sources, and I just watched a Balian trader's shipment transfigure into something that might be alive. I'm evacuating the promenade, but there's nowhere truly safe on this station. Sisko made a decision. Dax, you're with me. Worf, maintain position and monitor both entities. Kira, coordinate evacuation to inner sections and keep civilian panic contained. Chief, I need you to find a way to reinforce our structural integrity. I don't care if you have to manually weld support beams. Where are you going? Kira asked. To do what I do best, Sisko replied, already moving toward the turbolift. Talk to beings who don't think we matter. Minutes later, Sisko and Dax materialized on an upper pylon via site-to-site transport, as close to the battling goddesses as O'Brien dared beam them. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, they could see Nyx and Hecate more clearly, and the sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Nyx moved like poetry written in absence. Where she passed, space didn't darken, it became darkness, the primordial state before the universe's first light. Stars visible beyond her dimmed, not because she blocked them, but because their light simply chose not to exist in her presence. Her form constantly shifted, never quite solid, never quite ephemeral. Sisko found himself thinking of the prophets, but even they seemed less alien. The prophets were non-linear beings who'd evolved beyond time. Nyx was something that existed before evolution was possible. Hecate, by contrast, was almost painfully present. Every movement sent ripples through what Dax's tricorder called localized reality distortion fields. Where Nyx represented what was before existence, Hecate represented the power to dictate what existence meant. Runes orbited her in complex patterns, not decorative, Sisko realized, but functional. Each symbol was a rewrite of universal law in miniature. Tricorders going mad, Dax reported. I'm reading temporal distortions, spatial inversions, quantum probability cascades. Benjamin, their mere presence is destabilizing the fabric of spacetime. And the wormhole, she looked up, her expression grave. The prophets are trying to close it, to protect themselves, but they can't while these two are drawing power from it. Sisko opened a channel, broadcasting on all frequencies. I am Captain Benjamin Sisko of the United Federation of Planets. This station and the wormhole are under our protection. We request that you cease hostilities and open dialogue. For a long moment, nothing. The goddesses continued their deadly dance, shadow and sorcery tearing at each other with forces that made antimatter explosions look gentle. Then Nyx's voice filled the calm, though no transmission registered on any frequency. It simply was, like darkness itself had learned to speak. You are linear. You are temporary. You do not comprehend what is at stake. Hecate's response came simultaneously, overlapping, harmonizing in discord. The crossroads of worlds draws us. We are inevitable. Step aside, mortals, or be reshaped. We can't step aside, Sisko said, and his voice carried the weight of the emissary, though he'd never claimed that title willingly. The prophets, the beings who dwell in the wormhole, exist outside your conflict. You're threatening them. Nyx turned, and for the first time, her attention focused fully on DS9. Sisko felt the weight of that gaze, ancient, patient, utterly without mercy or malice. Just, vast. The prophets are children playing at eternity. I am the night that existed before their first thought. They will endure or they will not. The prophets are irrelevant, Hecate countered, and Sisko realized the goddesses were responding to him not out of respect, but because his words had momentarily united them in dismissal. Magic predates your temple dwellers. I will claim this nexus. Through it, I will make your reality accept what it has forgotten. A blast of shadow energy erupted from Nyx, aimed not at Hecate but at DS9's docking ring. Sisko watched in horror as absolute darkness enveloped two docked vessels. When it cleared seconds later, the ships remained, but aged millennia in moments, their hulls corroded to skeletal frames. That was a warning, Nyx said. Remove yourselves, or become part of the eternal night. Hecate laughed, and the sound made reality shudder. Or stay and witness transformation. I can make you gods, little mortals. Worship me, and I will remake you into something that matters. Sisko's hand tightened on his comm badge. First contact had failed spectacularly. These weren't beings who could be negotiated with, at least not in any conventional sense. They were forces of nature given consciousness, and they viewed DS9 and its crew the way a human might view bacteria, interesting perhaps, but ultimately expendable. Sisko to Ops, he said quietly. Prepare for worst-case scenario. And someone get me a direct line to the prophets. If ever we needed divine intervention, it's now. On the view screen, Nyx and Hecate resumed their battle, and each clash brought the universe one step closer to unraveling. The promenade had become a nightmare gallery. Odo moved through the chaos with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd maintained order through occupation, liberation, and war, but this was unlike anything even his centuries-old changeling experience had prepared him for. A Ferengi merchant stood frozen mid-scream, his body encased in crystalline shadow that pulsed with its own terrible life. Odo's tricorder registered the man as alive, but existing partially outside normal spacetime. 3 meters away, a section of deck plating had transmuted into what scanners called organic metal, breathing, warm to the touch, growing like a plant toward the nearest light source. Keep moving. Odo barked at the stream of panicking civilians. Inner sections, away from the external hull. Don't touch anything that looks different from when you last saw it. A Bajoran woman clutched her child, pointing with a shaking hand at the replimat. The food synthesizers were producing meals nobody had ordered, except the food was moving, rearranging itself into geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Mathematics made edible and aware. Quark appeared at Odo's side, for once not arguing. Constable, my bar, there are things in the shadows. Actual things. They tried to take one of my customers. Where is he now? I got him out, but barely. Quark's voice carried genuine fear. Odo, I've seen a lot in my time. Dealt with the Dominion, smuggled past Cardassians, even faced down the Nagus when he was in a mood. But those shadows? They're hungry. Before Odo could respond, the lights throughout the promenade died completely. Not flickering, not failing, simply ceasing to exist as if the concept of illumination had been revoked. Emergency lighting tried to compensate and immediately burned out, the bulbs aging to dust in their sockets. In the absolute darkness, Odo heard whispers. Not words exactly, but the memory of sound, ancient, patient, eternally cold. Then light returned, but wrong. The promenade was illuminated by a sourceless glow that cast shadows in directions that defied geometry. And in those impossible shadows, things moved. Everyone, run. Odo commanded, his form already shifting, becoming denser, more massive. If he could buy them time. A voice cut through his thoughts, resonating directly in his consciousness. Shapeshifter. You are more than the solids around you. More than linear. Odo felt Nyx's presence before he saw her manifestation. She didn't materialize so much as allow a fragment of her awareness to compress into something perceivable. A woman-shaped absence in reality stood before him, and looking at her was like staring into the space between stars. I am Odo, he said, maintaining his form through sheer force of will. Something about her presence made shape-shifting feel optional. As if form and formlessness were arbitrary distinctions she could rewrite. You need to stop this. These people have done nothing to you. Nothing. Nyx's voice was curiosity without warmth. They exist in light. They fear the dark. They have forgotten that before their stars, before their matter, there was only night. I am restoring what was lost. By killing them. By reminding them of truth. She moved closer, and Odo felt his molecular structure beginning to relax. Not painfully, but seductively. As if his constant struggle to maintain solid form was exhausting, and she offered rest. You maintain shape through effort. I could give you freedom from that burden. In darkness, form is optional. You could be truly free. For a moment, just a moment, Odo felt the temptation. The endless exhaustion of maintaining humanoid form, of pretending to be solid when his true nature was fluid. In her darkness, he could simply be? Then he thought of Kira. Of the life he'd built. Of the people depending on him. I choose my form, Odo said firmly. That's what makes me free. Nyx regarded him with something that might have been respect. Then you will endure what comes. She dispersed like smoke, her attention already elsewhere. Odo's combadge chirped. Odo, this is Kira. The prophets just sent another message through the orb in the temple. It's stronger this time, more urgent. They're saying, her voice caught, they're saying, the ancients cannot remain. The temple will shatter. The emissary must choose. In ops, Sisko stood before the main view screen, watching the impossible battle unfold. Dax worked frantically at her console, trying to model the damage being done to spacetime itself. The wormhole's dimensional structure is degrading, she reported. Every time one of them draws power from it, it destabilizes further. At current rates, we have maybe 6 hours before it collapses completely. And if it collapses? Sisko asked, though he already knew. The energy release would sterilize everything within 5 light-years. DS9, Bajorans, the Dominion fleet on the other side. All of it gone. Dax looked up, her ancient eyes haunted. Benjamin, the prophets are terrified. I've never felt that from them before. They exist outside time, but these two goddesses are threatening even that refuge. Worf's tactical console erupted with alerts. Captain, I'm detecting a massive subspace distortion. He stopped, his warrior's discipline momentarily breaking. It's the Founders. A Dominion fleet just emerged from the wormhole. The female changeling is hailing us. The view screen split. On one side, Nyx and Hecate's battle raged. On the other appeared the female changeling, her expression calculating. Behind her stood Weyoun, wearing his characteristic smile that never reached his eyes. Captain Sisko, the Founder said without preamble. It appears we face a common threat. You want to ally with us? Kira asked, suspicion heavy in her voice. I want to survive, the Founder replied. These beings, they threaten order itself. The Dominion was built to impose order on chaos. What you call Nyx represents primordial disorder. And the other, the witch, she offers power but at the cost of predictable reality. Neither can be tolerated. Weyoun leaned forward, his smile widening. The Founders propose a temporary cessation of hostilities. Pool our resources. Drive these goddesses back to wherever they came from. Sisko exchanged looks with Kira and Worf. An alliance with the Dominion was unthinkable under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. What exactly do you propose? Sisko asked carefully. The Dominion has studied the wormhole extensively, Weyoun said. We've developed theoretical weapons that manipulate its quantum structure. Combined with your understanding of the Prophets and Starfleet's technological capabilities. You want to weaponize the wormhole, Dax said flatly. We want to use it to expel the intruders, the Founder corrected. The alternative is its complete destruction, which serves neither of our interests. Before Sisko could respond, reality convulsed. Through the view screen, they watched as Hecate gestured toward the wormhole, and runes the size of solar systems blazed into existence around it. The wormhole's familiar blue-white aperture began shifting, cycling through colors that didn't exist in normal space. She's trying to rewrite it, Dax gasped. She's changing its fundamental nature from a spatial phenomenon to a magical construct. If she succeeds... Nyx's response was immediate and overwhelming. Darkness erupted from her form in a wave that eclipsed entire star systems. It slammed into Hecate's magical construct, and where they met, space tore. Not metaphorically. The fabric of reality literally ripped, revealing something beneath, or beyond, that made every viewer instinctively look away. It was wrongness given form, the space between dimensions that should never be perceived by mortal minds. Through that tear came a sound. Not heard through ears, but experienced directly in consciousness. It was the prophets screaming. "Benjamin!" Kira shouted. "The orb in the temple, it's overloading." Sisko felt it too, the connection he'd never fully understood or accepted. The prophets were calling to him, their non-linear communication translated through that inexplicable bond. Images flooded his mind. The wormhole collapsing. Bajorans consumed. The Alpha Quadrant falling into the tear between realities. Nyx and Hecate ascending to even greater power, using the wormhole's exotic matter to stabilize their presence in this universe. A choice: allow the goddesses to complete their transformation of this reality, or find a way to send them back, even if it meant sacrificing the wormhole itself. Sisko opened his eyes, decision crystallizing. Major, evacuate all non-essential personnel to runabouts. Get them at least 10 AU from the station. Chief O'Brien, begin preparations to overload the fusion reactors, controlled detonations only, but I want maximum yield ready. Sir. O'Brien asked, confused. If we can't negotiate with gods, Sisko said grimly, and we can't fight them conventionally, then we change the battlefield. He turned to the screen showing the founder. Your proposal is accepted. But understand this, if your forces betray us during this crisis, the prophets themselves will hold you accountable. The founder's expression was unreadable. Agreed. Weyoun will coordinate with your tactical staff. On the view screen, Nyx and Hecate's battle intensified. Every blow shook the station. Every spell and shadow strike brought reality closer to breaking. And through it all, the prophet's message echoed in Sisko's mind, the emissary must choose. The temple or the ancients. Both cannot remain. 6 hours until catastrophe. An alliance with the Dominion. 2 goddesses who viewed all of them as insects. And a choice that would define the fate of the entire quadrant. Sisko straightened his uniform. All hands, battle stations. We're about to attempt something that's never been done before. We're going to evict 2 gods from our reality. Deep Space Nine's operations center had become a war room hosting the strangest alliance in Federation history. Captain Sisko stood at the central display table, surrounded by his senior staff, while Weyoun's smiling face occupied one screen and Ghoul Dukat, somehow involved, because of course he was, appeared on another. The Cardassian Union offers its support, Dukat announced with that theatrical magnanimity that made Kira's jaw clench. I have 3 Galar-class warships standing by. Surely even you can appreciate the gravity of the situation when Cardassia, the Dominion, and the Federation stand together. We appreciate nothing from you, Dukat, Kira said coldly. But we'll take your ships. Chief O'Brien pulled up a schematic of DS-9 and the surrounding space. Right, here's the problem. Every conventional weapon we've thrown at them, phasers, torpedoes, even tricobalt devices, either passes through them like they're not there, or gets absorbed and makes them stronger. Nyx literally feeds on energy weapons, she converts them to darkness. And Hecate just transmutes them. We hit her with a quantum torpedo, and she turned it into a flock of birds. Birds, in space, that somehow survived and flew away. Then we stopped thinking conventionally, Dax said, manipulating the holographic display. They're drawing power from 2 sources, Nyx from the absence of light and stellar radiation, and Hecate from the wormhole's exotic particles. If we can disrupt those power sources, we make them vulnerable, Worf finished. But how do we create light intense enough to diminish a primordial goddess of night? We don't create light, Dr. Bashir said from his position near medical readouts. Everyone turned to look at him. Sorry, I've been analyzing the biological effects on my patients. Those touched by Nyx's darkness, their cellular structures aren't damaged. They're transformed. She's not destroying them, she's changing their fundamental state. And Hecate's victims show quantum-level alterations to their atomic structure. These goddesses aren't operating on our level of reality. They're changing the rules. So we change them back, Sisko said slowly. Or at least force the universe to remember its own rules. Weyoun's image leaned forward with interest. The Dominion has long studied the wormhole. The founders believe it exists in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously real and not real until observed. The prophets maintain it through their will alone. What if we could amplify that effect? Force local space-time to choose between their laws and ours? Dax's eyes widened. A quantum probability field. We create a region of space where the universe must decide, does magic exist, or doesn't it? Is darkness a force, or merely absence? Force reality to pick one. And hope it picks our version, O'Brien added grimly. The Cardassian fleet can provide the necessary power generators, Dukat offered. Our ships may not match your precious Federation technology, but we know how to generate massive amounts of energy. Sisko studied the display, his tactical mind racing. We'd need to surround both goddesses with the field simultaneously. Any gap and they could escape. Dax, could we use the wormhole itself? The prophets exist outside linear time, maybe they can help stabilize the field. It's risky, Dax warned. We'd essentially be weaponizing the Celestial Temple. The Bajorans. We'll understand, Kira interrupted, her voice tight but certain. The prophets are already in danger. They sent the warning. They know we have to act. On the view screen, Nyx suddenly turned her full attention toward DS9. The temperature in ops dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Frost formed on consoles. Breath became visible. Her voice resonated through every speaker on the station, though no signal was transmitted. You plot against forces you cannot comprehend. The Federation, the Dominion, the Cardassians, civilizations built on light and order. I am what exists when all your empires fade. When your stars burn out. When your gods themselves die. I will remain. Then she moved, and the movement defied every law of physics O'Brien understood. Nyx compressed herself. Not teleportation, but somehow existing at both her original position and right outside DS9 simultaneously, as if distance was optional. Darkness swallowed the station's external hull. Not shadow, but absolute negation. The station's lights throughout the habitat ring simply stopped existing. Life support screamed warnings as thermal energy bled away into nothing. Inside the ring, civilians huddled in corridors illuminated only by failing emergency lights that aged decades in seconds. Odo coordinated evacuation teams, his changeling form the only thing holding cohesion as panic threatened to explode into chaos. Then Hecate's laughter echoed through the dimensional fabric itself. Did you think I wouldn't notice your schemes, little mortals? I have existed since the first spell was spoken, since the first mortal realized they could bend reality through will and words. Your science is impressive, but it is still just another form of magic. And I am the mother of magic. Runes blazed into existence throughout DS9's interior. They appeared on bulkheads, deck plating, consoles, burning with ethereal fire that consumed nothing but rewrote everything. Where they manifested, technology began behaving according to new rules. In engineering, O'Brien watched in horror as his matter-antimatter reaction chamber suddenly decided that matter and antimatter were friends who wanted to coexist peacefully. The annihilation that powered the station simply stopped, not because the reaction failed, but because Hecate had temporarily rewritten fundamental physics to make it irrelevant. Emergency backup power only. O'Brien shouted to his team. And someone tell me those runes can be removed. Negative, Chief, a young ensign reported, her voice shaking. They're not physically present. Scanners say they don't exist, but we can see them. They're ideas made visible. And they're spreading. In ops, alarms cascaded across every station. Worf fought to maintain weapons systems as targeting protocols rewrote themselves into something that resembled astrology more than tactical software. Dax's science console began displaying data in languages that predated known writing systems, and somehow, she could read them. "Benjamin, it's working," Dax said with dawning horror. "Hecate is making magic real here. Not as metaphor, not as advanced technology we don't understand, but as an actual fundamental force. If she completes the transformation, then everything we know stops working," Sisko finished. "Because our technology requires a universe with consistent physical laws." Kira's panel erupted with incoming transmissions. "Captain, the Rotaran reports Klingon ships are experiencing similar problems. Martok says his weapons are firing curses instead of disruptors. And the Dominion fleet." She paused, listening to her earpiece. "The Jem'Hadar are panicking. Something about their genetic loyalty programming failing. They're becoming individuals." Through the chaos, Weyoun's voice cut with eerie calm. "This is unacceptable. The Founder's order must be restored. We're implementing our contingency." "Wait, what contingency?" Sisko demanded. On the view screen, 3 Dominion battleships broke formation and accelerated directly toward Hecate. Their hulls glowed with unstable energy signatures. "They're overloading their warp cores," Worf reported. "Deliberate breach. They're using their ships as antimatter bombs." Sisko felt ice in his stomach. "Weyoun, call them back. Those crews are Jem'Hadar," Weyoun replied simply. "They exist to serve the Founders. This is service." The 3 ships detonated simultaneously, each explosion equivalent to a supernova compressed into a 3-kilometer radius. The combined energy release hit Hecate with enough force to vaporize a planet. For a moment, silence. Sensors struggled to penetrate the radiation cloud. Then Hecate emerged, completely unharmed. If anything, she seemed amused. "Antimatter. How quaint. You think to harm me with the building blocks of reality? I am beyond such crude limitations." She gestured, and the radiation from the explosions reversed. The energy flowed backward, reassembling into 3 ghostly ships crewed by the dead Jem'Hadar, but wrong. Changed. Their eyes glowed with Hecate's power. "You gave me soldiers," Hecate said. "I accept them. They will serve better purposes now." The undead Jem'Hadar fleet turned toward DS9, their weapons charging with impossible energies. Nix's voice carried disappointment. "Witch Queen, these mortals are beneath our conflict. Let them flee or die on their own. You and I have a true battle to finish." "On the contrary," Hecate replied. "They attempted to harm me. That requires correction. And their station sits upon the nexus I claim. They must be removed." For the first time, Sisko saw discord between the goddesses. They weren't truly allied, they simply happened to arrive at the same place, pursuing the same prize. If he could exploit that division. But Nix's response eliminated that hope. "Then remove them quickly. I tire of this place. Once we've settled which of us claims the wormhole, I will plunge this entire sector into eternal night. And I will remake it into my domain," Hecate agreed. "A realm where magic is law, and I am its absolute ruler." They were negotiating. 2 primordial forces discussing the casual extinction of billions as if deciding how to divide property. Sisko's combadge chirped with a priority signal. It was Kai Wynn, her voice carrying both religious fervor and genuine terror. "Emissary, the prophets speak clearly now. They say, the ancients must depart or the temple will burn. Only the emissary can pay the price to banish them. Only the emissary can make the choice, save the temple, save the people, but not both." The words hit Sisko like a phaser blast. A choice. The prophets were offering him a choice, but one with unthinkable consequences. Save the wormhole, humanity's connection to the Gamma Quadrant and Bayer's most sacred site, but sacrifice DS9 and everyone on it. Or save DS9 and the thousands of lives aboard. But lose the wormhole forever, stranding Dominion forces in the Alpha Quadrant and destroying Bajoran faith. Outside, Nyx wrapped DS9 in absolute darkness while Hecate's undead fleet advanced. The goddesses prepared to finish their mortal annoyance before returning to their greater conflict. And Sisko stood in ops, faced with a choice no captain should ever have to make. The Bajoran temple on DS9's promenade level had always been a place of quiet contemplation, where the faithful came to meditate before the orb of prophecy and change. Now it pulsed with unstable energy, the orb itself blazing so brightly that Vedex had to shield their eyes. Kai Wynn stood before it, her political ambitions momentarily forgotten in the face of genuine divine terror. The prophets were screaming. Not in sound, but in fractured temporal echoes that rippled backward and forward through time. Every person with even minor psionic sensitivity within 10 kilometers felt it, a civilization that existed outside linear time experiencing something they'd never known, fear of ending. Sisko materialized via emergency transport, Kira beside him. The moment his feet touched the temple deck, the orb's light focused on him like a searchlight finding its target. Sisko of Bajorans. The emissary. You exist within linear time but walk between moments. I need answers, Sisko said aloud, knowing the prophets experienced his words, thoughts, and intentions simultaneously. What is the price you're asking? The ancients threaten our existence. The one of primordial darkness, the one of primordial change. They pull at the temple's foundation. They will consume us or remake us. Both outcomes are ending. Images flooded Sisko's mind. Not sequential, because the prophets didn't experience sequence, but layered and simultaneous. He saw possible futures. Nyx absorbing the wormhole's energy, becoming strong enough to extinguish every star in the Alpha Quadrant, plunging a quarter of the galaxy into eternal night where only she existed. Hecate rewriting the wormhole into a magical nexus, using it to transform the entire sector into a realm where reality was clay in her hands, where every being became her subject or ceased to exist. The wormhole collapsing entirely, the energy release creating a subspace rupture that would make the Bajoran system, and everything within 5 light-years, simply cease to exist. You're saying we can't win, Sisko said. That no matter what we do. You can banish them. But the cost is the temple. Kira gasped. No. There has to be another way. The ancients draw power from the temple. It is nexus. It is threshold. It is crossroads. The Witch Mother and the First Darkness were drawn here because reality is thin here. To sever their connection, the temple must be sealed. Forever. Sealed, Sisko repeated. You mean destroyed. Not destroyed. Removed. Made to never have been in this location. The tunnel through space will cease. Bajorans and the Alpha Quadrant will be separated from the Gamma Quadrant as they were before the temple was found. The implications crashed over Sisko like a tidal wave. Closing the wormhole would strand the Dominion forces currently in the Alpha Quadrant, cutting them off from reinforcement. End Bajor's connection to their gods, though the prophets assured him they would still exist, just elsewhere. Destroy the Federation's strategic position in the quadrant. Make DS9 a remote, relatively unimportant station again. Potentially save billions of lives. And if I refuse? Sisko asked. If I find another way? Then the ancients will consume the temple. And us. And Bajorans. And all who exist near this place. The Sisko has seen this outcome. It is not yet but will be unless the choice is made. Kai Wynn spoke, her voice trembling. Emissary, you cannot condemn Bajorans to lose the celestial temple. Our entire faith will survive, Kira interrupted, surprising everyone. The prophets aren't just in the wormhole. They're everywhere, non-linear. They've told us this. She looked at Sisko, tears in her eyes. But Captain, there has to be another option. Something we haven't considered. Before Sisko could respond, the station shuddered violently. Chief O'Brien's voice crackled over the comm, barely maintaining composure. Captain, Nyx just merged with the station's exterior hull. She's not attacking it, she's becoming it. Structural integrity down to 40% and falling. We have maybe 30 minutes before the darkness eats through to the core. Simultaneously, Dax's voice overlapped. Benjamin, Hecate's undead Jem'Hadar fleet just opened fire. Our shields are adapting to kinetic weapons, but their energy signatures keep changing. They're firing different types of reality alterations. One hit the docking ring and turned a 20-meter section into stone. Literal stone. Worf's tactical update followed immediately. Captain, the Rotaran and 3 Federation ships are engaging, but conventional weapons are useless. General Martok requests permission to ram the goddess Hecate directly. Permission denied, Sisko snapped. We're not sacrificing ships on gestures. He turned back to the orb, his mind racing through tactical scenarios, diplomatic solutions, scientific possibilities. There had to be another way. There was always another way. But the Prophet's presence in his mind was gentle and final. The Sisko seeks a path that does not exist. This is the nature of linear existence. Not all problems have solutions that preserve all desired outcomes. You must choose. The comm badge chirped again. This time it was Odo, his voice strained. Captain, I'm in the habitat ring. Nyx's darkness is spreading internally now. It's not just consuming light, it's consuming time. I just watched a family age 50 years in 5 seconds. They're alive but changed. If this continues, everyone on the station will experience their entire lifespans in the next hour. Another voice, Dr. Bashir, infirmary is overwhelmed. I have patients who are simultaneously young and old, alive and dead, healthy and ill. Quantum superposition of biological states. I can't treat them because their conditions change faster than I can diagnose. Hecate's magic is rewriting biology itself. Kira gripped Sisko's arm. Benjamin. The prophets are asking you to make this choice because they can't. They exist outside time, they experience all moments simultaneously. To them, the wormhole has already been destroyed and still exists and never existed. They need someone linear to make the choice real. Sisko looked into her eyes and saw the Bajoran major wrestling with faith and duty. She believed in the prophets absolutely. The wormhole was her people's most sacred site. And she was telling him to destroy it. Nerys. My people will survive, she said firmly. We survived the occupation. We survived the Cardassians. We'll survive losing the temple's physical location. But we won't survive if those goddesses consume us. Make the choice, Captain. That's an order from your first officer. A faint smile touched Sisko's lips despite everything. You don't outrank me, Major. No. But I'm Bajoran, and you're the emissary. Sometimes the faithful have to give the prophet permission to do what's necessary. Through the temple's viewports, Sisko could see the battle. Nyx had expanded to encompass half the station, her darkness now visible as a living thing that pulsed with alien hunger. Hecate floated before the wormhole itself, her arms raised, runes burning in patterns that made space itself scream. The goddesses had stopped fighting each other. They were working together now, both drawing massive amounts of energy from the wormhole. Not because they'd allied, but because they'd realized that whoever controlled the wormhole first would have unlimited power to destroy the other. It was a race. And everyone caught between them was collateral damage. Captain Sisko, Weyoun's voice cut through the calm, and for once the Vorta's perpetual smile was absent from his tone. The female changeling has authorized me to inform you that the Dominion will accept any solution that removes these threats. If that includes the wormhole's destruction, we consider it an acceptable loss. Better to be stranded in the Alpha Quadrant than to allow reality itself to be consumed. Even the founders agreed. Beings who'd waged war to control the wormhole were willing to lose it. Sisko took a deep breath. He thought of Jennifer, his late wife. Of Jake, his son, safe on Earth. Of the crew who trusted him. Of Bajorans and its people. Of the Federation's ideals. Of the prophets who'd chosen him for reasons he still didn't fully understand. And he thought of the simple, terrible mathematics, the certain death of billions versus the potential salvation of the quadrant. What exactly would I need to do? Sisko asked the orb. Enter the temple. Become the anchor. Allow us to use your linear existence to sever the connection between this space and the tunnel. You will survive, but changed. The temple will relocate to a space where the ancients cannot follow. And the goddesses will lose their power source. How changed? The Sisko will exist partially outside linear time. You will see moments that are not yet. You will remember moments that will not be. You will be bridge between linear and non-linear. This is the price for mortality to command divine power. Benjamin, no, Kira said, understanding dawning. They're asking you to become like them. Part prophet. Not part prophet, Sisko corrected. A living anchor. A way for them to affect linear time through me. He looked at her. It's the only way. Another violent shudder. O'Brien's voice, nearly panicking, hull breach on 3 decks. Darkness is flooding compartments 12 through 18. Evacuating, but there's nowhere to evacuate to. Decks, overlapping, the wormhole is destabilizing. Hecate's almost completed her transformation of it. In approximately 4 minutes, it will become a purely magical construct, and the prophets will cease to exist in any form we can interact with. 4 minutes. Sisko made his decision. Chief, begin emergency evacuation of all personnel. Every runabout, every shuttle, every escape pod. Get them at least 20 AU from the station. Dax, coordinate with the Dominion and Klingon fleets. I want every ship ready to provide rescue and transport. Worf, you're in command of the evacuation. Sir, what are you? Worf began. That's an order, Commander. Sisko turned to Kira. Major, you're relieved. Get to a runabout. Like hell I am, Kira said flatly. Nares. You're walking into the wormhole to save us all. You really think I'm letting you do that alone? She unholstered her phaser and checked the charge. Besides, someone needs to watch your back. Even gods can be shot. Despite everything, Sisko felt gratitude wash over him. Stubborn Bajoran. Damn right. She smiled grimly. Let's go save reality, emissary. The orb blazed brighter, and Sisko felt the prophet's approval wash over him. As he and Kira moved toward the runabout bay. Toward the wormhole, toward a confrontation with goddesses, toward a choice that would change him forever, he activated the station-wide comm. This is Captain Sisko. All hands, abandon station. This is not a drill. You have 3 minutes to reach evacuation craft. To the prophets, I say, I accept your bargain. To Nyx and Hecate, I say, your time here ends now. He closed the channel and began running. Behind them, the orb's light reached out like fingers, guiding them forward. Ahead, through the station's viewports, the wormhole churned with unnatural colors as 2 goddesses fought to claim ultimate power. And Deep Space Nine, humanity's gateway to the Gamma Quadrant, began its final hour. The runabout Rio Grande streaked through space toward the wormhole at maximum impulse, its small frame dwarfed by the cosmic battle raging around it. Sisko piloted with the practiced ease of someone who'd made this journey hundreds of times, but never under circumstances like these. Through the forward viewport, the wormhole writhed like a living thing in pain. Its normally stable aperture fluctuated wildly, expanding, contracting, cycling through colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Hecate floated before it, arms outstretched, pouring magical energy into its structure. The runes surrounding her had grown to astronomical scale, each symbol large enough to encompass a starship. And behind them, DS9 was dying. Nyx had merged so completely with the station's structure that it was impossible to tell where metal ended and primordial darkness began. Entire sections of the habitat ring had simply ceased to exist, replaced by voids that predated matter itself. Through sensors, Kira watched evacuation craft streaming away like fireflies fleeing a storm, but too slowly. Too many people still aboard. 3 minutes until wormhole transformation completes, Dax's voice crackled over the comm from the Defiant, which held position at a safe distance. "Benjamin, whatever you're planning." "I know, old man," Sisko replied. The nickname for his friend Symbiont carried weight now. Dax had lived 8 lifetimes, but even that paled before beings who'd existed since the universe's birth. "Stand by to provide covering fire. We're going in." "Captain, I must protest this course of action," Worf's voice cut in. "You are flying directly toward 2 hostile entities of immeasurable power. This is not sound tactics." "Noted, Commander." Protest logged. Sisko pushed the runabout's engines harder. "But sound tactics went out the airlock the moment gods decided to have a territorial dispute in our backyard." The Rio Grande passed through a debris field, what remained of 3 Jem'Hadar fighters that had attempted to engage Hecate. Their hulls had been transmuted into crystal, their crews frozen in moments of transformation, neither alive nor dead but existing in some third state that defied biology. Kira checked her phaser, then rechecked it, a nervous habit. "So what's the plan?" "We fly into the wormhole, you become partly non-linear, and somehow that gives us the power to banish 2 primordial goddesses. That's the general idea." "That's a terrible plan. You have a better one?" She was quiet for a moment. "No. Which is why I'm here." She looked at him, her expression serious. "Benjamin, the prophets said you'd be changed. What if that means you can't come back? What if becoming their anchor means staying in the wormhole forever?" Sisko's hands tightened on the controls. He'd considered that. Thought about Jake growing up without a father, about never seeing Cassidy again, about becoming something more than human but less than whole. "Then that's what it means," he said simply. "But Bajoran survives. The Federation survives. The Quadrant survives. That's worth the price." Before Kira could respond, the runabout lurched violently. Alarms screamed as something impossibly massive moved across their path. Nyx had noticed them. She manifested directly ahead of the runabout, her form expanding to fill their entire viewport. This close, Sisko could see that she wasn't simply darkness, she was the concept of darkness given awareness. Within her form, he glimpsed things that made his mind recoil, the heat death of the universe, the space between atoms, the final moment before consciousness ceases. Her voice resonated through the hull itself. "The emissary. The one who walks between. I have watched you, little prophet touched. The non-linear ones chose well, you are more than your fellows. But you are still linear. Still bound by time's arrow. You cannot threaten me." Sisko activated the comm, Defiant, fire at will. The Defiant unleashed a full spread of quantum torpedoes and phaser fire. Multiple Klingon vessels joined in, their disruptors adding to the barrage. Even the Dominion ships contributed, polaron beams slicing through space. The combined firepower would have vaporized a Borg cube. Against Nyx, it accomplished exactly what Sisko intended, distraction. She turned her attention to the attacking fleet, shadows erupting from her form to intercept the weapons. In that moment of diverted focus, Sisko punched the impulse engines to emergency power and dove past her, the Rio Grande skimming so close to her manifested form that frost instantly coated the hull. "Warning, Hull temperature dropping below operational parameters, the computer announced calmly. Life support compromised. Reroute emergency power to environmental systems, Kira ordered, working her console frantically. And someone remind me why we just flew closer to the goddess of eternal night. Because she expected us to run away, Sisko replied, adjusting course toward the wormhole's fluctuating entrance. Now she's behind us. But Hecate was ahead. The witch goddess had completed another phase of her transformation. The wormhole now pulsed with magical energy that made sensors screen warnings about impossible quantum states and reality coherence failure. She turned her attention to the approaching runabout, and her laughter echoed across subspace frequencies. Bold, emissary. Or foolish. You fly toward me as if you could challenge a goddess. She gestured, and 3 of her orbiting runes detached, streaking toward the Rio Grande like seeking missiles. Let me show you what happens to mortals who forget their place. The runes hit the runabout's shields and rewrote them. Instead of deflecting energy, the shields now attracted it. Every stray particle of radiation in the area began converging on the ship. Shields are attacking us. Kira shouted over the rising alarm sounds. I'm trying to shut them down, but the controls are responding to commands I haven't given. Hecate had turned their own technology against them. The shield generators began overloading, preparing to explode and take the runabout with them. O'Brien's voice crackled over the channel. Captain, I'm reading your shield status. Don't try to shut them down, she's rewritten the safety protocols. I'm sending an emergency override code. You'll have a 3-second window to eject the shield generators before they breach. The code streamed across Kira's console. She executed it with precision born of years in the resistance, her fingers flying. Ejecting in 3, 2, 1, now. The shield generators explosively separated from the runabout's hull, tumbling away into space where they detonated harmlessly. The Rio Grande lost shields entirely but gained speed, no longer burdened by systems trying to kill them. Impressive, Hecate acknowledged. Your engineer is skilled. Perhaps I will keep him when I remake your reality. He could serve me well. Behind them, Nyx had finished dealing with the fleet. 3 Klingon ships floated dead in space, their crews aged to dust. The Defiant retreated, damage reports flooding from multiple systems. Even the Dominion battleships pulled back, recognizing futility. But the goddess's attention was divided now. Hecate focused on the wormhole's final transformation while Nyx pursued the Rio Grande, clearly intrigued by Sisko's determination. You fly toward the temple, Nyx observed, keeping pace with the runabout effortlessly. The non-linear ones have made you promises. They have shown you visions. But child prophet, understand, I existed before time itself. Your prophets are infants playing at eternity. Even if you enter their realm, even if they grant you power, you will still be less than me. Maybe, Sisko acknowledged, making minute course corrections as the wormhole's entrance shifted erratically. But I'm betting you've never faced someone who was partly linear and partly not. Someone who exists in time and outside it simultaneously. That makes me something new. Something you haven't encountered in your eternal existence. For the first time, he sensed something from Nyx that might have been uncertainty. The emissary speaks wisdom, came a new voice. The female changeling, her image appearing on a calm channel. The founders have long studied the wormhole and its inhabitants. We understand now what you intend. It is elegant. Using your unique connection to the prophets to become a bridge. A weapon forged from the intersection of linear and nonlinear existence. I'm not looking for the founders' approval, Sisko said coldly. Nevertheless, you have it. And our support. The transmission cut briefly, then resumed with urgency. Weyoun informs me that we've analyzed Hecate's transformation of the wormhole. In approximately 90 seconds, she will complete the process. When that happens, the wormhole will become fully magical, and the prophets will be ejected from it. They will cease to exist in any form accessible to linear beings. 90 seconds. The Rio Grande was 30 seconds from the wormhole entrance at current speed. Sisko looked at Kira. Last chance to turn back, Major. Stop insulting me and fly faster, she replied. He smiled grimly and pushed the engines past safety limits. The runabout shuddered, hull plating beginning to glow from atmospheric friction despite being in vacuum, a physical impossibility that demonstrated how thoroughly Hecate had corrupted local spacetime. Hecate finally noticed their approach. Her eyes, ancient and terrible, focused on the tiny runabout daring to challenge her. You would enter the wormhole while I am remaking it. Mortal, I will unmake you atom by atom. I will scatter your consciousness across dimensions where even death is impossible. She raised one hand, and reality bent toward her will. Space between the runabout and the wormhole suddenly contained distance, not measured in kilometers, but in concepts. Every meter forward became a light year. They were flying but getting no closer, trapped in relative distance that defied physics. She's manipulating spacetime geometry. Kira reported. We're moving at full impulse but not advancing. Sisko's mind raced. Conventional navigation was useless if Hecate could redefine what distance meant. But the prophets existed outside linear space. Computer, activate emergency transport, Sisko ordered. Target, the wormhole's event horizon. Authorization Sisko Alpha 1. Warning, the computer replied. Target coordinates are in a state of quantum flux. Transporter lock impossible. Transport would result in molecular dispersion. That's an order. The transporter engaged. The familiar tingle of dematerialization washed over Sisko and Kira, but wrong, fragmented, as if the transporter couldn't decide which version of them to materialize. They reformed inside the wormhole itself. And everything changed. The wormhole's interior was no longer the serene blue corridor of light Sisko remembered. It had become a battlefield where physics warred with magic, where linear time clashed with nonlinear existence. The prophets were there. All of them, manifesting as humanoid forms because Sisko's linear mind needed to interpret them that way. But they were losing. Hecate's power flooded the space, her runes burning through the dimensional walls like acid through flesh. The prophet's light dimmed with each passing moment. And behind Sisko, Nix entered the wormhole. Now, Nix said with satisfaction, we are in a place outside your linear physics. Here, I am strongest. Here, darkness predates even the temple dwellers. Emissary, you have made a tactical error. The darkness and the magic converged from opposite directions. The prophets watched, helpless. And Sisko stood between godhood and annihilation, knowing the next 60 seconds would determine the fate of the quadrant. He reached out to the prophets with his mind. I'm ready. Make me your anchor. The prophet's response washed over him like a wave. The transformation will be painful. The Sisko will experience all moments simultaneously. You will know what has been and what will be. You will carry this burden forever. I accept. The prophet's light surged into Sisko, and he screamed as linear existence shattered around him. Benjamin Sisko experienced time breaking. Not sequentially, as a linear being would understand breaking, but simultaneously. He was standing in the wormhole and also sitting with Jennifer on the beach where they first met and also holding newborn Jake and also commanding DS9 and also dying of old age and also being born and also experiencing moments that hadn't happened yet and might never happen and had already happened in timelines that were unmade. His consciousness expanded across causality itself. He could see Kira beside him, but also see every version of her. Resistance fighter, Starfleet major, old woman reflecting on a life well lived, child in the refugee camps, versions that existed in timelines where the occupation never ended, where she died fighting, where she become Kai. The prophets poured their nonlinear nature into him, and for an infinite instant that lasted no time at all, Sisko understood what it meant to exist outside the arrow of time. Then the pain hit. His linear brain evolved to process one moment after another, to remember past and anticipate future, tried to contain everything at once. It was like forcing an ocean through a straw. He felt blood vessels burst in his eyes, felt his neural pathways burning with information no human mind was designed to hold. But he held it anyway. Because between the moments of agony, he could see what needed to be done. Benjamin. Kira's voice, anchoring him. She gripped his shoulders, her presence a lifeline to linear existence. Stay with me. Don't let it take you completely. He focused on her voice, used it as a tether. Slowly, the infinite moments began to separate into something manageable. Not linear, he'd never experienced time that way again, but organized. He could choose which moments to perceive, which futures to examine, which pasts to remember. And in that moment of clarity, Benjamin Sisko became something unprecedented, a being who existed in time and outside it simultaneously. The prophet's emissary in truth, not just title. He opened his eyes, all versions of his eyes across all moments, and looked at the goddesses. Nyx had frozen mid-advance, her primordial awareness recognizing that something fundamental had changed. The darkness around her form rippled with uncertainty. What has occurred? The linear one is, not linear. This is impossible. Nothing is impossible to those who command magic, Hecate declared, but even her confident tone carried a note of caution. Her runes blazed brighter, analyzing Sisko with senses that predated science. He has been transformed. The prophets have made him their avatar. Clever. But still insufficient. Sisko stood, and standing meant something different now. He existed in this moment and also in moments before and after. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd already experienced every possible outcome of this confrontation. Nyx. Goddess of Night. You claim to have existed before time. But I've seen your origin now, I can perceive backward to the moment you first gained consciousness. You emerged from the void, yes, but you are not the void itself. You are what the void became when it learned to think. That makes you younger than you claim. The darkness around Nyx convulsed. You dare. And Hecate. Witch mother. Source of magic. I've seen forward to the moment you cease to exist. In timelines where magic becomes obsolete, where reality hardens into pure physics with no room for will to reshape it. You fear that future. That's why you're here, trying to remake this universe before it becomes too rigid to accept your nature. Hecate's eyes blazed with fury. You know nothing, mortal made eternal. I know everything, Sisko replied, and it was true and terrible. I know why you're both really here. It's not about the wormhole's power. It's about survival. You're fleeing your own universes, realities that are evolving past the need for primordial forces. You came here hoping to find a reality young enough, malleable enough, to still accept you as fundamental. The prophets manifested around Sisko, their forms more solid now, strengthened by his anchoring presence. The prophet that wore Sarah Sisko's face spoke, the emissary perceives correctly. The ancients are refugees. Their own realities have outgrown them. But this reality is ours, another prophet added. We exist here. We maintain the temple. The ancients cannot remain. Nyx's form expanded, filling half the wormhole with darkness that pressed against the prophet's light. I will not be dismissed by infant gods and their pet hybrid. I am eternal. I will consume this temple and make it mine. She struck. It wasn't an attack in any conventional sense. Nyx reached across causality itself, attempting to edit Sisko's timeline, to erase his transformation, to make it so he'd never entered the wormhole. She tried to unwrite his existence as the prophet's anchor. But Sisko existed in all moments simultaneously now. Erasing him from one moment meant confronting him in infinite others. He raised his hand, across all timelines, and blocked her strike with the prophet's power flowing through him. I've already experienced this attack. I've already countered it. You're too late, Nyx. You were always too late. From a non-linear perspective, you lost this battle the moment you entered the wormhole. Hecate laughed, sharp and dangerous. You focus on the shadow while ignoring the substance, emissary. I care nothing for your temporal tricks. Magic transcends time entirely. She unleashed a spell that was older than spoken language, a working of pure will that attempted to rewrite the fundamental rules governing the wormhole. If physics said magic couldn't exist here, she would simply change physics. The wormhole itself screamed as two paradigms warred, the scientific reality of stable wormholes created by non-linear beings, and the magical reality of mystical gateways commanded by willpower alone. Sisko felt the strain. He was anchoring the prophet's version of reality, holding it stable against Hecate's transformation. But she was strong. Unimaginably strong. Power that had reshaped entire dimensions now focused on this single point of spacetime. Kira, Sisko said, his voice strained. I need you to do something. She stood beside him, phaser ready despite knowing how useless it would be. Anything. The Bajoran orbs. They're fragments of the prophets, physical manifestations in linear space. There's one in the temple on DS9. If you can. The station's being consumed by darkness, Kira interrupted. How am I supposed to? You won't do it now. You'll do it then. Sisko's eyes met hers, and she saw something profound in his gaze. He was looking at her across multiple timelines simultaneously. I'm sending you back. 3 minutes before we entered the wormhole. You'll have time to retrieve the orb before Nyx consumes that section of the station. That's temporal manipulation, Kira breathed. The prophets can do that. Through me, yes. Now go. Sisko gestured, and Kira vanished, not into space, but into time. The prophet's power, channeled through their linear anchor, reached back through causality and plucked her from this moment, inserting her into an earlier one. Nyx reacted with shock. Impossible. Linear beings cannot traverse time at will. I'm not entirely linear anymore, Sisko replied. He was burning now, his hybrid nature straining under the impossible demands being placed on it. Blood ran from his nose, his ears. His body was dying even as his consciousness expanded across eternity. And you're right to be concerned. Because I just changed the timeline. Which means you never saw what's coming next. In the past. 3 minutes before the present moment, Kira materialized in the Bajoran temple on DS9. Nyx's darkness was spreading but hadn't reached this section yet. She had maybe 90 seconds. Kai Wynn stared at her in shock. Major? How did you were just here, then you left with the emissary. No time to explain. Kira ran to the orb of prophecy and change, deactivating its protective field. The orb blazed brilliantly, recognizing the presence of someone touched by the prophet's purpose. Forgive me, she whispered to the prophets, then grabbed the orb with both hands. The vision hit her like a phaser blast. She saw Benjamin Sisko, burning with non-linear fire, holding reality together through sheer will. Nyx and Hecate, ancient and powerful, but also afraid, truly afraid for the first time in their endless existences. The wormhole, poised between existence and non-existence. And the orb itself, a weapon that was never meant to be a weapon, but could be if wielded with faith and desperation. Show me what to do, Kira pleaded with the prophets. Show me how to help him. The prophet's response filled her mind, bring the orb fragment to the temple now. The emissary requires physical anchor for non-linear power. The orb will serve. Kira ran. Through corridors that were beginning to age and corrode. Past panicking civilians and crew members desperately trying to evacuate. She felt Nyx's attention turn toward her, felt the primordial awareness recognize she carried something precious. "O'Brien," she shouted into her comm badge. "I need emergency transport to the wormhole. Now." "Major, you're still on the station." "How did you? Never mind. Stand by for emergency beam out." She materialized in space, wearing an emergency EVA suit that O'Brien had brilliant presence of mind to materialize around her. The Rio Grande was still approaching the wormhole, a different Kira was still aboard with a different Sisko, the ones who hadn't time-traveled yet. This was hurting her brain, but she pushed through. She activated her suit's thrusters and flew toward the wormhole entrance, the orb blazing in her arms. Inside the wormhole, present moment Sisko felt her coming. Felt the orb approaching. Felt timelines beginning to converge. "Now," he said to the prophets. "While they're distracted by temporal paradox. Now we act." The prophets and their emissary moved as one. Power that had been building, gathering, preparing, suddenly unleashed. It wasn't violence. It was correction. Reality remembered what it was supposed to be. The wormhole rejected Hecate's magical transformation, her runes shattering like glass. Space-time reasserted its natural laws, and magic, so carefully woven into the fabric of this place, unraveled. Simultaneously, the prophet's light intensified, burning away Nyx's darkness. Not destroying it, but defining it. Forcing the primordial goddess to be merely absence of light rather than fundamental negation of existence. Both goddesses reeled, suddenly vulnerable in ways they hadn't been for eons. "Impossible!" Hecate shrieked. "I am the source. Magic cannot be rejected." "You forget," Sisko said, his voice resonating with prophet power. "This isn't your reality. You're visitors here. And we're the prophet's children. This is our home." Kira entered the wormhole, the orb still blazing in her hands. She saw Sisko, her captain, her emissary, her friend, burning with power that was killing him even as it saved them all. She pressed the orb into his hands. The fragment of the prophets merged with their anchor. Linear and non-linear became one. Past, present, and future collapsed into eternal now. And Benjamin Sisko, for one infinite moment, became a god. The power that flooded through Sisko was incomprehensible. He felt the orb's physical presence grounding him, giving his transformed consciousness a tether to linear reality while simultaneously amplifying his connection to the prophet's nonlinear existence. He was the bridge. The singular point where two fundamentally incompatible states of being intersected and somehow coexisted. And through that bridge flowed power enough to challenge gods. "Nyx," Sisko said, and his voice echoed across every moment simultaneously. "Hecate. You came to this reality seeking refuge. Seeking a place malleable enough to accept your nature as fundamental law. But you were wrong about one thing, this universe isn't young. It's simply different." He gestured, and the wormhole itself responded to his will. The tunnel through space-time expanded, its walls becoming transparent. Through them, Nyx and Hecate could see the full majesty of the Trek universe, thousands of civilizations, countless species, technologies that approached the sublime. A galaxy that had evolved not through magic or primal forces, but through reason, exploration, and the relentless drive to understand rather than simply control. "Your realities evolved past you," Sisko continued. "Beings learn to wield your power through science, through technology, through understanding the fundamental laws you represented. They didn't need primordial darkness when they could engineer black holes. They didn't need magic when they could manipulate quantum probability fields." Hecate's form blazed with fury. "You dare lecture me on power? I have reshaped dimensions. I have created and destroyed pantheons. In your universe," Sisko acknowledged. "Where the rules were written to allow for such things. But here." He reached out with his prophet-enhanced awareness and pushed against Hecate's presence. Here, magic isn't fundamental. It's an aberration. A localized reality distortion that the universe itself wants to correct. The runes surrounding Hecate began to crack, their mathematical impossibilities unable to sustain themselves against a reality that was actively rejecting them. She poured more power into them, but it was like trying to hold water in a sieve. Every ounce of magical energy she expended simply bled away into a universe that had no framework to sustain it. No, Hecate whispered, and for the first time, genuine fear entered her voice. I am eternal. I am the mother of witchcraft. I cannot simply fade. Not fade, one of the prophets corrected. Depart. You do not belong here. The emissary shows you truth. Your nature and this reality are incompatible. You must return to a universe that remembers magic. Nyx, observing this exchange, made her own calculation. She was ancient, primordial, but not foolish. She'd survived since the first darkness because she knew when to retreat, when to wait, when to conserve power for battles that could be won. The prophets and their pet emissary have made their position clear, Nyx said, her form beginning to compress, to withdraw. Very well. I am patient. I am eternal. This universe will age. Its stars will die. And when the last light fades, when heat death approaches and entropy claims all, I will return. And there will be no prophets, no emissary, no one to challenge the inevitable darkness. Perhaps, Sisko acknowledged. That's trillions of years away. By then, this universe may have evolved into something neither of us can imagine. But today? Today you leave. He reached out with both hands, one physical, gripping the orb, one metaphysical, channeled through prophet power. And grasped Nyx's essence. It was like trying to hold smoke, trying to grip shadow. But Sisko existed partially outside linear time now. He could perceive Nyx across all moments of her existence, could identify the singular thread that was her core consciousness, and could pull on that thread with the combined strength of the prophets themselves. Nyx fought back. Darkness exploded outward, trying to consume him, to age him to dust, to drag him into the void before existence. She was primordial force given consciousness, and she did not yield easily. But Sisko had something she didn't. Connection to billions of linear beings, their hopes and dreams and stubborn refusal to accept that darkness was inevitable. Every person aboard DS9, every crew member who'd trusted him, every Bajoran who'd called him emissary, they were anchors of their own, tethering him to the reality they all shared. You're alone, Nyx, Sisko said, straining against her power. You've always been alone. That's what it means to be primordial. You predate connection, predate community. But I'm not alone. I carry thousands of lives with me. And we all say, you don't belong here. The wormhole itself responded to his command. Its walls, maintained by the prophet's will, now amplified through Sisko, began to push. Not physically, but dimensionally. The tunnel through spacetime became a tunnel out of spacetime, a passage back to the dimensional void between realities. Nyx felt herself being ejected, forced back toward the nothing space from which she'd emerged. This is not ending, she declared, her voice resonating with ageless fury. This is postponement. I will find another way, another entry point. The darkness always returns. Maybe, Sisko said. But not here. Not now. Not in my universe. With a final surge of prophet-powered will, he pushed. Nyx's form unraveled, not destroyed but displaced. She was forced back through dimensional barriers, ejected from the Trek reality like a foreign object rejected by a body's immune system. Her darkness went with her, peeling away from DS9's hull, withdrawing from the station's corridors, releasing the people and places it had begun to transform. And then she was gone. The wormhole shuddered, its structure stabilizing slightly. One threat eliminated. But Hecate remained. The witch goddess had been watching, analyzing, learning from Nyx's defeat. She was ancient, but also adaptive. She'd survived eons by understanding when to change tactics, when to abandon one approach and try another. Impressive, emissary, Hecate said, her tone shifting from fury to cold calculation. You've mastered the art of dimensional ejection. But I am not Nyx. I am not raw force. I am intelligence. I am will. And I have a proposition for you. Sisko, exhausted from expelling Nyx but still burning with prophet power, regarded her warily. I'm listening. You claim magic cannot exist in your universe permanently. Perhaps that's true, my runes crack, my spells unravel. But emissary, consider this, you are an impossibility yourself. A linear being who exists non-linearly. You are a living paradox, a walking violation of your universe's rules. Yet here you stand. She drifted closer, her form still blazing with power but contained now, less aggressive. I could teach you. Show you how to consciously manipulate the very fabric of reality, not just through the prophet's borrowed power, but through your own will. You could become truly godlike, not a hybrid, not an anchor, but a sovereign being who answers to no one. Kira, still holding her position near Sisko, raised her phaser. Benjamin, don't listen to her. This is manipulation. Of course it's manipulation, Hecate acknowledged with a smile. I am the goddess of crossroads, of choices. I offer options. Always have. And here is yours, emissary, send me away as you did the darkness, continue being the prophet's servant, their tool. Or accept my knowledge, become truly independent, and reshape not just this crisis but your entire existence. Sisko felt the temptation. Not because he craved power, he'd never been that kind of officer, but because he could see across timelines what Hecate's knowledge could do. Timelines where he saved Jennifer. Where he prevented the Dominion War. Where he became something greater than human, greater than emissary, something that could protect everyone he loved forever. But he also saw the cost. Saw himself becoming isolated, distant, losing the very humanity that made him who he was. Saw the Federation afraid of him. Saw Jake growing up with a father who was physically present but emotionally unknowable. He saw himself becoming what Hecate was, powerful, ancient, and utterly alone. No, Sisko said simply. Hecate's expression hardened. You refuse power. You refuse evolution. I refuse to become something my son wouldn't recognize. Sisko straightened, feeling the prophet's strength flowing through him again. You said I'm a living paradox. You're right. But I'm also Benjamin Sisko, Starfleet captain, father, and yes, emissary. That's not servitude. That's purpose. That's connection. It's something you've forgotten how to value. Then you are a fool, Hecate declared, and her power exploded outward one final time. This wasn't manipulation or proposition. This was raw assault. Hecate poured every ounce of her vast magical might into a single overwhelming strike designed to shatter Sisko's hybrid existence, to prove that will and magic trumped borrowed prophet power. Reality itself buckled. The wormhole threatened to collapse entirely. Space-time screamed. And Benjamin Sisko, holding the orb in hands that were both physical and metaphysical, made his choice. He didn't fight Hecate's power. He accepted it. Let it flow into him, through him, the same way he'd accepted the prophet's transformation. He became a conduit for impossible energies, prophet light and witch magic both, and instead of letting them destroy each other, he held them in balance. Just for a moment. Just long enough to understand both. I see now, Sisko said, his voice carrying awe despite the agony of containing incompatible forces. You're not trying to conquer this universe, Hecate. You're trying to survive. Your home reality is dying, magic is failing there, fading into pure physics. You came here hoping to find a place that still believed in magic, that could sustain your existence. You're not a conqueror. You're a refugee looking for asylum. Hecate froze, her attack faltering. How? Because I'm holding your power right now. I can feel your fear. Sisko's eyes held compassion despite the cosmic stakes. I understand survival. The Federation was built on providing refuge. But Hecate, we can't grant you asylum here. This universe can't sustain your nature without breaking its own rules. You need a reality where magic is already fundamental. There are no such realities left. For the first time, Hecate's composure shattered. I have searched through dimensional barriers for millennia. Every universe I find has evolved past magic, has hardened into rigid physics. I came here because the wormhole represented potential, a place where reality was still malleable, still young enough to accept me. Then we help you find something better, Sisko said. The prophets stirred, their collective presence questioning. The emissary proposes aid to the Ancient One. She's not our enemy, Sisko said. She's desperate. And isn't that what the Federation does? Provide options for those who have none. He turned his prophet-enhanced awareness outward, perceiving beyond the wormhole, beyond the Alpha Quadrant, beyond even the Trek universe itself. Looking across dimensional barriers, searching through the infinite possibility space between realities. And he found it. A young universe. Billions of years behind the Trek reality in development. A cosmos where physical laws were still crystallizing, where magic and science hadn't yet diverged into separate paradigms. A reality where Hecate could exist without forcing incompatible rules onto an established system. There, Sisko said, showing her the vision. A place where you can be fundamental again. Where magic isn't dying but being born. Hecate saw it, and hope, genuine, shocked hope, flooded her ancient being. It's possible. It's there. The prophets can open a path. But you have to go willingly. No more trying to conquer our reality. No more transforming the wormhole. You leave, peacefully, and never return. She looked at him for a long moment. Then at the prophets. Then at the young universe Sisko had found. You would truly help me. After I threatened your people, your station, your reality. That's what we do, Kira interjected, lowering her phaser. We're Starfleet. Even our enemies deserve a chance at life. Hecate laughed, genuinely, without malice. Your Federation is either profoundly wise or catastrophically naive. Perhaps both. She inclined her head toward Sisko. Very well, emissary. I accept your offer. Open the path, and I will depart. Sisko nodded to the prophets. Together, they reshaped the wormhole one final time, not into a tunnel through space, but a bridge between realities. A passage to that young universe where magic could thrive. Hecate moved toward it, her form already stabilizing, her runes burning brighter as she sensed a reality that would sustain her. She paused at the threshold. Thank you, Benjamin Sisko. You are more than your prophets deserve. I shall remember your mercy. She smiled. And should your reality ever truly need magic's touch, call across the dimensional void. I will remember this debt. Then she stepped through, and the passage closed behind her. The wormhole stabilized. The prophet's light filled it once more. And Sisko collapsed, the orb falling from his hands as his hybrid consciousness could no longer sustain itself. The crisis was over. But the cost was yet to be determined. Sisko woke in the infirmary aboard DS9, though woke wasn't quite accurate. He became aware of the moment, while simultaneously being aware of moments before and after. His consciousness flickered between timelines like a hologram with a faulty projection matrix. Dr. Bashir's face swam into focus. Or rather, multiple versions of Bashir across different moments all converged into one perceivable image. The genetically enhanced doctor looked exhausted, his uniform stained with blood and worse things from treating casualties of the goddess's assault. Welcome back, Captain, Bashir said, running a medical tricorder over Sisko's temples. Or should I say, welcome back to linear time. Your neural patterns are unprecedented. You're experiencing temporal displacement syndrome, but unlike anything in the medical literature. Your consciousness exists in multiple moments simultaneously. How long? Sisko asked, though part of him already knew the answer across several timelines. 72 hours since you collapsed in the wormhole. Major Kira brought you back via emergency transport. Captain, your body was in a state of temporal flux, aging and de-aging simultaneously. I've had to put you in a localized temporal stasis field just to keep you stable enough to treat. Sisko tried to sit up, and reality lurched. He saw himself sitting up, lying down, standing, walking out of the infirmary, all at once. The sensation was nauseating in a way that transcended physical discomfort. Easy, Bashir cautioned, steadying him. Your connection to linear time is tenuous at best. The prophet's transformation didn't fully revert when you expelled the goddesses. You're still partially non-linear. Benjamin, I don't know if this condition is permanent. The door to the infirmary opened, and Kira entered. But Sisko saw her entrance across multiple moments, the moment she learned he'd survived, the moment she'd feared he wouldn't, the moment 3 hours from now when she'd check on him again. All layered, all simultaneous. Benjamin, she said, and her voice anchored him somewhat. Linear beings, he was learning, could serve as temporal anchors themselves. Their singular experience of time helped him focus on this moment rather than all moments. How are you feeling? Like I've lived 1,000 lifetimes and none at all, Sisko replied honestly. The station? Recovering. Chief O'Brien has teams working around the clock to repair the sections damaged by Nyx's darkness. Structural integrity is back to 90%. We lost 47 people during the evacuation, some to temporal acceleration, others to Hecate's reality transformations that we couldn't reverse. Her voice carried the weight of those losses. But it could have been so much worse. Thousands could have died. Bajorans could have been destroyed. You saved us, Benjamin. We saved each other, Sisko corrected, then paused as another wave of temporal displacement hit him. He saw multiple futures branching from this moment, timelines where he recovered fully, timelines where he remained trapped between linear and non-linear existence, timelines where the strain killed him in days, weeks, years. The prophets, he said suddenly. Are they? They're fine, Kira assured him. More than fine. The wormhole is stable again. Stronger than before, actually. The Videk Assembly believes your actions, becoming their anchor, channeling their power, permanently reinforced the Celestial Temple's connection to our reality. She smiled. You're not just the emissary in title anymore. You're literally part of the prophet's existence now. Before Sisko could process that information, Ops contacted the infirmary. Dax's voice carried urgency. Benjamin, sorry to interrupt your recovery, but we have a situation. The Dominion fleet is requesting a meeting. The female changeling wants to discuss implications of recent events. And General Martok is demanding to speak with you personally, something about witnessing the most glorious battle in Klingon history. Sisko exchanged glances with Bashir. The doctor sighed. I can't medically clear you for duty. Your temporal stability is too fragile. But I also can't stop you, can I? Not if the Dominion and Klingon are both making demands. Sisko carefully swung his legs off the biobed, fighting through the disorientation of experiencing the movement across multiple timelines. Help me to Ops. We need to manage the fallout before someone decides to capitalize on our weakened state. 20 minutes later, or 20 minutes across most timelines, Sisko was still learning to filter. He stood in Ops, the command center slowly returning to normal operations. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, though many cast furtive glances at their captain. Word had spread about his transformation, and he could see the fear and awe in their expressions. The main view screen displayed two images, the female changeling on one side, General Martok on the other. Behind the founder, Wei-Aun wore his characteristic smile. Behind Martok, Klingon warriors regarded Sisko with something approaching religious reverence. Captain Sisko, the female changeling began, her liquid features unreadable as always. The Dominion acknowledges that your actions prevented a catastrophic outcome for all parties. The goddesses represented a threat to order itself, precisely the kind of chaos the founders were created to prevent. We are grateful, Wei-Aun added, his smile widening. And we wish to propose a temporary extension of our alliance. The wormhole stabilization benefits both our peoples. No, Sisko said simply. His temporal awareness showed him exactly where this negotiation would lead if he allowed it to continue. The crisis is over. The alliance was temporary, as agreed. Dominion forces will withdraw back through the wormhole within 48 hours. The female changeling's expression hardened. You would squander an opportunity for peace. I would honor our agreement, Sisko replied. You wanted the goddesses removed. They're gone. Now we return to the status quo. Unless the Dominion wishes to formally negotiate a peace treaty with the Federation, which we both know isn't happening while you're actively occupying Cardassian space and preparing for further expansion. For a long moment, silence. Then the founder inclined her head fractionally. You are pragmatic, Captain. Very well. We will withdraw. But understand, the Dominion remembers both threats and those who neutralize them. Your actions have purchased goodwill. Do not waste it. The transmission ended. Martok's booming laugh filled ops. Ha! Well said, Captain. You faced down gods and founders with equal courage. The Empire salutes you. He raised a goblet of blood wine. Songs will be sung of this day, the day the emissary banished primordial darkness and the mother of witches. You have brought honor to yourself and your people. General, I appreciate the sentiment, but no false modesty. Martok insisted. You fought beings that made the Borg look like children with toys. You merged with your gods to save your people. That is the stuff of legend, Sisko. The Klingon High Council has voted unanimously, you are to be made an honorary member of the House of Martok. You and your descendants will forever carry Klingon blood right. Worf, standing at tactical, looked both proud and slightly concerned. Captain, this is an extraordinary honor. Only 3 non-Klingon in history have been granted such status. Sisko felt the weight of it, across multiple timelines, he saw the implications. Alliance with a great house would provide leverage in future negotiations, but also obligations. Honor debts that could be called upon. He saw futures where this honor saved lives, and futures where it complicated delicate diplomatic situations. But Martok was right about one thing, they had fought side by side against impossible odds. That meant something. I accept, Sisko said formally. The House of Sisko is honored to join the House of Martok in brotherhood. Martok's grin could have split his scarred face. Kapla, my brother. We shall drink blood wine and sing of victory when you are recovered. Martok out. The transmission ended, and Sisko allowed himself a moment of weakness, gripping the edge of his command chair. The temporal displacement was getting worse, not better. He was drifting. Dax was at his side immediately. Benjamin, you need to rest. Your quantum signature is destabilizing. I'm fine, old man, Sisko lied. No, you're not. She lowered her voice. I've been analyzing your condition. The prophets transformed you into something unprecedented, a bridge between linear and nonlinear existence. But Benjamin, bridges exist to be crossed. They're not meant to be permanent dwellings. You can't remain in this state indefinitely. Then what are my options? Dax hesitated, her 8 lifetimes of experience evident in her troubled expression. You could ask the prophets to complete your transformation. Become fully non-linear like them. Leave linear existence behind permanently. I'd never see Jake again, Sisko said immediately. Never experience time the way humans do. I'd be isolated from everyone I love. Yes, Dax agreed quietly. Or you could ask them to reverse the transformation entirely. Return you to purely linear existence. You'd lose the connection, the power, the ability to perceive across timelines. You'd be Captain Benjamin Sisko again, nothing more. But alive. Human. Present for my son. Yes. But Benjamin, Dax's voice carried infinite sadness, the prophets might not allow that. You've seen what you can do as their anchor. You saved the quadrant. They might consider you too valuable to release. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sisko looked around ops, at Kira coordinating repair crews, at Worf maintaining tactical readiness, at O'Brien working his engineering miracles from a secondary console, at Bashir monitoring medical emergencies from a medical station. His crew. His people. Across multiple timelines, he saw them continuing without him. Saw Kira promoted to captain. Saw Worf taking command. Saw DS9 thriving, struggling, surviving. Life went on, with or without Benjamin Sisko. But in only one timeline did he see himself present for Jake's wedding. Present for grandchildren. Present for a life beyond duty and divinity. Computer, Sisko said quietly. Record personal log. Star date, what's the current star date? Stardate 51247. 9, the computer replied. Personal log, stardate 51247.9. Captain Benjamin Sisko recording. He paused, gathering his thoughts across multiple moments, trying to compress non-linear experience into linear narrative. The crisis with the goddesses Nyx and Hecate has concluded. Both entities have been removed from our reality. DS9 is damaged but recoverable. Casualties are within acceptable parameters for an event of this magnitude. He took a breath. But I'm not sure I'm recoverable. The prophets transformed me to save the station, and I don't know if that transformation can be undone. I exist between moments now, experiencing time in ways no human should. I can see futures that might be, pasts that were, presents that are and aren't simultaneously. It's magnificent and terrifying. Another pause. Jake, if you're listening to this someday, and I've seen timelines where you do, I want you to know that everything I did to protect you. To protect everyone. The prophets chose me for reasons I still don't fully understand, but I chose to accept their power because it was the only way to save billions of lives. If that choice means I can't be your father the way I want to be, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His voice caught. Across timelines, he saw Jake's reaction to this log, anger, understanding, grief, pride, all layered and simultaneous. End log. Kira approached, her expression gentle. Benjamin, the prophets are requesting communication. The orb in the temple is glowing. They want to speak with you. Of course they did. They'd given him power, and now it was time to discuss the cost. Sisko straightened, fighting through the temporal displacement. Then let's not keep the prophets waiting. As he walked toward the temple, he knew with absolute certainty across all timelines what they were going to ask. And he knew, with terrible clarity, what his answer had to be. Some choices, even when you can see all their consequences across infinite futures, remain impossible. The Bajoran temple hummed with energy that transcended physics. The orb of prophecy and change, returned to its protective housing after Kira had wielded it in the wormhole, blazed with light so intense that even the Vedex maintained respectful distance. Sisko entered alone, though Kira stood vigil outside the entrance, her hand resting on her phaser out of habit, as if she could somehow protect the emissary from his own gods. The moment Sisko crossed the threshold, linear time ceased to have meaning. He stood in the temple, but also stood in the wormhole, but also stood in 100 other moments across his life. The prophets manifested around him in forms his mind could interpret: Sarah, his mother who was also a prophet; Jennifer, his late wife, even versions of himself, older and younger, all simultaneously present. The Sisko returns, they said in unified non-linear harmony. The emissary who became anchor. The linear one who walks between moments. You wanted to speak with me, Sisko said, his voice echoing across multiple timelines. About what comes next. The Sisko perceives correctly. The transformation is unstable. You exist in linear time and non-linear simultaneously. This state cannot persist indefinitely. A choice must be made. The prophet wearing Sarah's face stepped forward. We offer 3 paths, Benjamin. First path, complete the transformation. Become fully non-linear. Join us in the temple, exist outside time zero. You would be our voice in all moments, our hand in linear affairs. You would save countless lives across infinite timelines. Sisko saw that future unfold, himself as pure consciousness, unbound by flesh, experiencing all moments at once. He saw himself preventing disasters before they happened, guiding civilizations toward peace, becoming something greater than human. He also saw Jake growing old without a father, saw his friends mourning him as lost even though he'd still exist, saw himself becoming more prophet than man. Second path? Sisko asked, though he already knew. Second path, reverse the transformation entirely, the prophet wearing Jennifer's face said. Return to pure linear existence. You would lose the connection, the sight across timelines, the power to affect nonlinear space. You would be mortal again, vulnerable, limited. But present. Capable of living a human life. That future spread before him too, retirement from Starfleet, time with Jake, perhaps even finding love again with Cassidy Yara whom he'd met only months ago. A simple life, by his standards. Coffee on the promenade. Baseball. Growing old with dignity. Dying peacefully in bed surrounded by grandchildren he'd never meet if he chose differently. And the third path? Sisko asked, though his temporal awareness showed him this answer too, layered with terrible complexity. Third path, remain as you are now, the youngest prophet manifestation said, appearing as Jake at age 10. Hybrid existence. Neither fully linear nor non-linear. The bridge persists, but the strain persists also. Your linear body will degrade rapidly, months, perhaps a year, experiencing temporal stress no human physiology can withstand. You would be present for some of your son's life, but not all. You would serve as emissary, but know that your service has an expiration. You would live with the knowledge of your own ending. 3 paths. 3 futures. Each carrying weight that would crush a lesser being. Across the temple, the prophets waited with infinite patience. Time meant nothing to them, they would wait seconds or centuries for his answer, experiencing both durations simultaneously. But Sisko was still partially human, still linear enough to feel urgency, still a father who desperately wanted to see his son grow up. If I choose to return to linear existence, Sisko said carefully, what happens to the wormhole? To your connection with Bajorans? Will you still be able to communicate with linear beings? The temple will persist, the prophets assured him. Your service as anchor has permanently strengthened our ability to interact with linear space. We will find other ways to communicate with Bajorans. Other emissaries, perhaps, in time. The Sisko would not be abandoning us. The Sisko would be choosing life. And if I become fully non-linear? Join you completely. You would be our greatest asset, Sarah's prophet form said. A consciousness that remembers linear existence but operates non-linearly. You could guide our interactions with temporal beings, help us understand cause and effect in ways we struggle to perceive. You would prevent catastrophes across countless timelines. Save billions of lives that would otherwise be lost. The weight of that, being able to save so many, prevent so much suffering, pressed against Sisko's conscience like a physical force. What right did he have to choose personal happiness over the potential to save billions? But then he thought of Jake. Thought of the young man who'd already lost his mother, who'd spent years watching his father transform from grieving widower to Starfleet captain to reluctant prophet. Jake deserved a father who was present, who experienced time normally, who could simply be there. The hybrid path, Sisko said slowly. If I remain as I am now, deteriorating, could I train a replacement? Someone else who could become anchor if needed. Give you time to find another solution. The prophets considered, their non-linear consultation occurring instantly and eternally. In some futures, he chose to become fully non-linear and spent eternity watching Jake from outside time, unable to touch him, unable to be truly present even as he experienced every moment of his son's life simultaneously. In others, he returned to linear existence and lived peacefully, but across multiple timelines disasters occurred that he could have prevented, wars, plagues, spatial anomalies that killed millions. And in the hybrid futures, he had months to a year before his body gave out under temporal strain, dying painfully as his consciousness fragmented across too many moments. None of the paths were good. That was the nature of impossible choices. Can I ask you something? Sisko said to the prophets. Why me? Why did you choose me as emissary? I've never fully understood. The prophet wearing Sarah's form smiled. Because you exist at a crucial intersection, Benjamin. You are human but raised by one who carried our essence. You are Starfleet but reject absolute certainty. You are father but also leader. You doubt but also believe. You are contradictions made flesh, the perfect bridge between linear and non-linear existence. That doesn't make the choice easier, Sisko said quietly. No. It does not. But the Sisko has faced impossible choices before. On the Saratoga during the Borg attack, remain or escape. Taking command of Deep Space Nine, accept or refuse. Facing the Dominion, negotiate or prepare for war. You have always chosen based on principle rather than ease. What's the principle here? Sisko asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Stay human and potentially let billions die in futures I could have prevented? Become non-linear and abandon my son? Remain hybrid and die slowly, leaving Jake to watch me deteriorate? The principle, the prophet wearing Jennifer's face said gently, is that you cannot save everyone. That is the hardest lesson for linear beings, especially those with power. You want to believe that with enough sacrifice, enough effort, enough pain, you can prevent all suffering. But Benjamin, some suffering is inevitable. Some losses cannot be prevented. The question is not, how do I save everyone? The question is, what life can I live with integrity? The word struck Sisko with the force of revelation. Across his temporal awareness, he saw timelines where he tried to prevent every disaster and drove himself mad with the impossibility. Saw timelines where he chose power and lost himself. Saw timelines where he chose humanity and lived with guilt. But he also saw one timeline, narrow, difficult, but possible, where he made peace with limitation. I choose linear existence, Sisko said, and saying it felt like stepping off a cliff. I choose to be Benjamin Sisko, Starfleet captain, father, man. I choose to accept that I can't save everyone across all timelines. I choose to be present for my son, for my crew, for the life I actually have rather than the infinite lives I could perceive. The prophets regarded him with what might have been approval, might have been disappointment, might have been both simultaneously in the way only non-linear beings could experience emotion. The Sisko chooses limitation. Mortality. Linear existence with all its pain and brevity. Yes, Sisko confirmed. I choose to be human. This choice cannot be undone. Once we sever your connection to nonlinear existence, you will lose the sight, the power, the ability to perceive across timelines. You will be mortal again, with mortal limitations. I understand. And you will not remember this conversation, Sarah's prophet form added gently. Nonlinear experiences cannot be retained by linear consciousness. When we restore you, you will remember the crisis, remember banishing the goddesses, but not the choice you made here. Not the paths you rejected. You will simply wake in your linear existence, wondering what happened in this temple. Will I know, deep down, that I chose this? Sisko asked. Perhaps. The Sisko has always possessed strong intuition. You may feel certainty that this was right, without knowing why. Sisko took a deep breath, or experienced taking a breath across multiple moments, one of the last times he'd perceive reality this way. Then let's do it. Return me to linear existence. Let me be Captain Sisko again. The prophets gathered around him, their forms blazing with light. We honor the Sisko's choice. You were our emissary, our anchor, our bridge between states of being. Now you return to the linear stream. Know that we will remember, even if you do not. Know that your service saved not just this moment, but countless others across possibility space. Know that choosing humanity over divinity is not weakness, it is the most profound expression of what makes you worthy of such choice. The light intensified, becoming overwhelming. Sisko felt his consciousness compressing, collapsing from infinite awareness back into the singular point of now. It was like going from hearing a symphony to hearing a single note, not lesser, exactly, but fundamentally different. Finite. Bounded. Human. The last thing he perceived across multiple timelines was Jake's face, smiling at him with pride and love. And then Sisko opened his eyes in the Bajoran temple, feeling utterly normal for the first time in days. The orb glowed gently before him, no longer the blinding beacon it had been. Dr. Bashir and Major Kira stood nearby, both looking concerned. Benjamin, Kira said carefully. You've been in here for 3 hours. We were getting worried. 3 hours. Sisko checked his chronometer, feeling the strange sensation of time moving in only one direction, moment to moment, the way it was supposed to. It felt like minutes. Your neural readings are normal, Bashir reported, scanning him with a medical tricorder. Whatever temporal displacement you were experiencing, it's resolved. You're fully linear again. It's remarkable, really. The prophets must have intervened. Sisko stood, testing his legs, his balance, his sense of reality. Everything felt solid, singular, present. No flickering between timelines, no experiencing multiple moments simultaneously. He was just Benjamin Sisko, standing in a temple on a space station, alive and human. I'm fine, he said, and meant it. Let's get back to work. The station won't repair itself. As they walked back to Ops, Kira studied him with the intense scrutiny of someone who knew him too well. What did the prophets say to you? I don't remember, Sisko admitted, and it was true. The conversation was gone, replaced by a simple certainty that felt right in his bones. But I think they released me from something. I think they gave me a gift. What kind of gift? Sisko smiled, thinking of Jake waiting for him, thinking of a future he couldn't see but could live. The gift of getting to choose life. They reached Ops, where the crew worked efficiently to restore the station to full operational capacity. Damage reports, repair schedules, diplomatic communications with a dozen governments wanting to understand what had happened, the mundane, endless work of keeping a station running and a quadrant stable. It was bureaucratic, complicated, sometimes tedious work. And Sisko had never been more grateful for it in his life. 3 weeks after the goddesses departed, Deep Space Nine had returned to something resembling normalcy. The promenade bustled with traders and travelers again. Quark's bar served drinks to Starfleet officers and civilians who'd stopped talking about temporal displacement and reality corruption and started complaining about ordinary things like replicator rations and duty rosters. The habitat ring's damaged sections had been rebuilt, the scorch marks from impossible energy scrubbed away or covered with fresh bulkheads. The universe, it seemed, had a remarkable capacity for absorbing the impossible and moving on. Captain Benjamin Sisko stood in his office, looking through the viewport at the Bajoran wormhole. It opened and closed with mathematical precision, admitting a Vulcan science vessel on a routine survey mission. No goddesses. No primordial forces. Just the stable, predictable phenomenon that the prophets maintained, their gift to linear beings who needed cause and effect, who lived moment to moment rather than experiencing all moments at once. Captain. Jake's voice came from the doorway. His son had arrived from Earth 2 days ago, worried about reports of his father's condition. Now he stood there, relief evident on his young face. You're still standing in front of windows staring at the wormhole. Some things never change. Sisko smiled, turning to embrace his son. Some things shouldn't change. How are your studies? On hold while I made sure my dad wasn't going to turn into an immortal space prophet, Jake replied, but his tone was affectionate. Dr. Bashir says you're completely normal now. No more temporal displacement, no more existing in multiple moments. You're just, you. Just me, Sisko agreed, and the words carried weight he couldn't fully articulate. He'd lost something, he knew that instinctively, even without remembering what. But he'd also gained something back. The simple experience of being human, of living one moment at a time, of not knowing every possible future. It was limitation. And it was freedom. The Federation sending an investigative team, Sisko said, changing the subject to safer ground. They want to understand what happened, document it, prepare protocols in case other extradimensional entities attempt similar incursions. Will it happen again? Jake asked. Other gods or whatever showing up? Sisko considered the question. The prophets had strengthened the wormhole's defenses, and he suspected, without knowing how he knew, that they'd taken additional measures to prevent dimensional refugees from using it as an entry point. But the universe was vast, ancient, and full of forces that mortal beings barely understood. Probably, Sisko admitted. The galaxy is bigger and stranger than we imagine. But we handled Nyx and Hecate. We'll handle whatever comes next. He paused. Though I'm hoping for a few quiet years first. Jake laughed. On Deep Space Nine. Dad, you know better than that. He did. This station had never been quiet, not during the Cardassian occupation, not during the Federation transition, not during the ongoing tensions with the Dominion. DS9 sat at the crossroads of the quadrant, and crossroads attracted travelers, traders, refugees, explorers, and occasionally, ancient goddesses looking for new realities to call home. A call came through from Ops. Captain, Kira's voice carried professional efficiency with an undertone of amusement. General Martok is on subspace. Something about a ceremonial induction into his house. He's asking when you'll be available to attend the festivities on QNOS. Sisko suppressed a groan. He'd accepted the honor in the heat of crisis, and Klingon took such matters seriously. Tell the general I'll coordinate with him next week. And remind him that Starfleet captains have limited tolerance for blood wine. He says that's what makes it fun, Kira replied. Also, Ambassador Weyoun sent a very polite message thanking us again for maintaining order during the recent unpleasantness. The Dominion fleet withdrew through the wormhole right on schedule. They're gone. For now, Sisko said, because the Dominion War was coming, he could feel it in his bones, in the way political tensions kept escalating despite diplomatic efforts. But that was a problem for tomorrow, next month, next year. Today, his son was here, his crew was safe, and his station was whole. One more thing, Kira added. The VDEC Assembly is requesting a meeting with you. They want to discuss the theological implications of the emissary temporarily becoming one with the prophets, then choosing to return to mortal existence. Apparently, there's significant debate about what it means for Bajoran faith. Sisko closed his eyes briefly. He'd known this was coming. The Bajorans needed their emissary to be a certain kind of figure, divinely chosen, touched by the prophets, capable of miracles. And he was all those things, technically. But he was also just a Starfleet captain who'd made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. "Schedule it for next week," Sisko said. "After the Klingon ceremony." "And Nerys? Thank you. For everything you did during the crisis. I couldn't have done it without you." "You're welcome, Benjamin. And for what it's worth. I'm glad you came back. The prophets are eternal, but we need you here. Now." Linear. The comm closed, and Sisko returned his attention to Jake. His son was watching him with the careful assessment of someone who'd seen his father go through hell and wanted to make sure he'd really come back. "I'm okay, Jake," Sisko said. "I know the reports made it sound worse than it was. Dad, you merged with non-linear alien gods to fight primordial darkness and the mother of witchcraft. I think the reports made it sound exactly as bad as it was." Jake's expression softened. "But you're here. You're you. That's what matters." They stood together at the viewport, watching ships come and go, watching the wormhole open and close, watching the station continue its endless work of connection and commerce and communication. Father and son, both alive, both present, both experiencing this single moment without seeing all possible futures branching from it. Somewhere in the Gamma Quadrant, the Dominion planned their expansion. Somewhere in Klingon space, warriors sang new songs about the battle against gods. Somewhere in the Federation, admirals and scientists analyzed reports and prepared for threats that might never come. And somewhere beyond dimensional barriers, in realities that would never touch this one again, Nyx waited in eternal darkness and Hecate built kingdoms of magic in a universe young enough to sustain her. But here, now, on Deep Space Nine, Benjamin Sisko, Starfleet captain, emissary, father, and simply human, stood with his son and watched the stars. Some battles required godlike power to win. But the real victory was choosing to remain human afterward. Choosing presence over omniscience. Choosing the life you had over all the lives you might have lived. The prophets had taught him many things during his brief time existing between moments. But the most important lesson was one he'd carry forward in linear time, one moment at a time. You cannot save everyone across all possible timelines. You can only show up for the people in front of you, do the work that needs doing, and trust that choosing to be present, fully, humanly present, is enough. "Come on," Sisko said to Jake. "Let's get dinner. I want to hear about your writing, and I promise, no station emergencies, no diplomatic crises, no gods for at least the next 2 hours." Jake grinned. "I'll hold you to that." They left the office together, father and son, walking through a station that had survived impossible threats and would face more in the years to come. But for now, for this moment, Deep Space Nine was at peace. And Captain Benjamin Sisko, who had briefly touched divinity and chosen humanity instead, was finally, truly home.